Alright, now let's talk about handling post requests in Express. So what we have here is we have an example application with a simple form that allows a user to pick their favorite fruit, then submit the form, which will generate a post request to our Express app. So if we click here, you can submit it. This will generate a post request to /favorite fruit, and the Express application will reply with your favorite fruit is apple. So this is the example we'll be discussing, and we'll see the code behind this. So let's take a look at our example code. Alright, so this is our example of using post variables with Express, and up here we have our modules. We're using the same templating engine. We have this extra line here, which I'll talk about in a bit, and we have our error handler, which I'll actually talk about in this section. So let's take a look at our routes. Alright, so we actually have two routes here. One is a get, and one is a post. So basically when we get slash, we render our fruit picker template, which I'll show you in a bit, but basically this is just a form. It allows users to select what their favorite food is among the choices given here. So here we have fruits, which is an array, apple, orange, banana, peach. This is going to be posted in the fruit picker form. So when the user submits the form, it'll submit a post request to /favorite fruit. So this is actually where we handle the form submission. So the way we handle post requests is by accessing the variables in request.body. So here we say favorite equals request.body.fruit. But there's something you actually have to pay attention to here. So we're looking at this request.body object, but it's only populated if we register the body parser middleware. So if we go up here near the top, you notice that I have this extra line, app.use express.bodyParser. So what this is doing is it's registering middleware with Express. So what does that mean? So when you register a middleware function, you're basically telling Express, I want to do this extra processing. And since we have this extra processing before app.router, the processing in express.bodyParser will happen before we hit any of our routes. So app.router is sort of a way to specify when you want your routes to be called. So Express actually has different middleware for different purposes. But in this case, express.bodyParser, for our purposes, will parse the body of the request and populate request.body so we can access it in our route below. Alright, so this is kind of a small diversion, but I just wanted to show you this for reference. If you want to see the different kinds of middleware available for Express, you can actually go to expressjs.com, which is the home page, look at the API reference, and go down to middleware, and you can see all the middleware available. So right here we have body parser, which we were just using, and body parsing middleware actually wraps a few other functions, but for our purposes we just care about the fact that it's parsing our post variables. Alright, so that's where you can go for reference if you're ever wondering what middleware to use. Alright, so we've registered our body parser middleware, which means that down here we can just use request.body.fruit. However, if the user didn't pick one and submitted the form anyway, fruit will be undefined. So we actually have to check for that, and we'll talk a little bit about this special error handling later. If the user did pick a fruit, we say response.send your favorite fruit is, and then whatever the favorite fruit is that they picked. Alright, so before we run it, let's just take a quick look at our templates. So here we have fruitpicker.html, basically just a form, and it's iterating over fruits, saying for fruit and fruits, create a new input field for each fruit that we passed in. So this is just our template using our fruits array. Alright, so we've run our app. We have our server listening on port 3000. So let's go open that in a browser. Alright, so here we have our fruit picker form. What is your favorite fruit? And let's just pick the first one, submit, and it says your favorite fruit is apple. So let's go back to our application. So I want to talk a little bit about this error handler function. So in Express, you can register functions specifically to deal with errors. The way you do that is you actually specify a function with 4 arguments. First the error object, then the request object, then the response object, then this next callback, which we'll talk about below. Alright, so if we go back to our route, you can see that we have a request object, the response object, and this next callback. So this third argument, next, is actually a function passed in by Express along with the request and response objects. And one of the things we can do with it is we can actually use it to handle errors. So here we say if type of favorite equals undefined, we say next error, please choose a fruit. So by passing an error object to next, we're telling Express that we've had some kind of error. And what Express does at that point is tries to handle the error. And the way it does it is by looking for any error handling middleware that we may have registered earlier. So if we go back up here a little bit, you can see this is our error handling middleware, and when you call next with an error object, Express will say, okay, we've had an error, let's find any error handling middleware that's been registered and call it. So what this will do is it'll log our error message, it'll log the stack trace for our error, it'll return a server error status, and it'll render the error template to the user. So let's try that out. So we have our server listening on port 3000 again. Let's go back to our picker page. Now what happens if we submit without picking any of our fruit? Alright, so here we actually have an error logged from the server because we called next with our error object, and Express knew to call our error handling middleware. So if we go back here, we'll actually see this huge stack trace, because in our error handling middleware we also printed out a stack trace in addition to rendering the error page. Alright, so that was a quick introduction to using post variables in Express, using some basic middleware, and registering middleware to handle any errors that you have.